All right, guys, I just wanted to come on here real quick, go over this RIVN trade. This is a quick, 1 day, overnight type of trade. Didn't really get what I wanted, and I was able to have really good risk management in this trade. So this is the first time I can actually go over some good risk management on how I, manage my risk and manage my trades. So I'm gonna go over this one real quick, and I'll go over the recap for the other two trades that I've been in, that I was actually in a couple days ago. So the first one I'm gonna go over is path, right? So pretty decent sized pullback today. I'm in only one runner left, so I'm only, in a position that I can have come down to my break even, that it won't really affect me, right? It's just one contract left. And this was a great trade, right? This was something I was not able to alert. I already went over that, but this went up to a 98% winner. I think I sold majority of my position off at like 45%. And I posted that in the chat, and I'll pull it up in a second. So I'll actually just do that real quick. So my initial take profits on these were around 40%. So let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay, so here is so I bought 10 of these, made around 43%, trimmed those, had 4 left, and then let me look for the other one. Right, and then trimmed some more at 75%, and I had 3 left at 75%, and then I also trimmed the other 2 at 98%. So let me see if I can pull that up real quick. There we go. And then 98% was the 3 of these. That kind of came on bigger than I thought. Hold on, let me make that smaller. So around 98%, sold 2 of those and have 1 left. So huge trade, really, trimmed through the position pretty well. And I'm only having 1 left, right? So reason I kind of was scaling out of these, because obviously 100% move in 2 days is really good. I'm not going to complain about that. I'm going to take profits a lot quicker, right? Obviously I didn't get my full take profit points on these, right? So obviously my first take profit was around 17.35, and then 18, and then obviously I'm targeting up here at 19.20, right? Obviously this thing could still continue to run. That's why I only have 1 contract left, and I left those at to let it go to wherever it wants to. As long as it comes back down and doesn't hit my break even stop loss, then this can continue to go. I have February contract, so that can continue to run. RIVN, right, was a trade I had that I alerted that went around 25% this morning, and I was quickly able to trim that the first 20-30 minutes of the open, and it comes back down, and it was actually rejecting pretty hard off of that big key level, right? I talked about needing a specific key level to get over, that if this wanted to continue to make this breakout happen, right, this would need to get over, and it was actually struggling for a while to get over that spot. So I'm gonna go over like my spots that I really liked here. So I'll show you the trade. I entered these this morning or yesterday in the afternoon, right? So I entered these adding RIVN calls to 20, right, at 78 cents, medium size, right? So I entered these a little bit late, kind of towards the end of the day. Didn't really get the exact entry point I wanted, so I took these anyway for a little bit of a smaller size than usual, and I was targeting, right, 20.73, 21.55, and then 22. So those are my 3 targets on that. And you can see that was that big key spot that we need to get over, right? 20.73 was that number 1 take profit point. If we can get over that, we would see 21.55 easily. So those were my 2 take profit points there. And then this morning, right, we trimmed a small portion at 15%, right off the open. It did open up red, around 10% red, went up to 15% green. So I was like, a 25-point swing right there. Took some profits, small, right? Took a small portion off at 0.87, and then trimmed half at 25%. So good move, right? Once I get 25%, this is how I manage my risk, manage my trades, right? When I get 25% or more, I trim around half most of the time, and I put my stop losses at break even, right? That makes it the trade risk-free. The only reason I do that, not a lot of people do it, because not a lot of people put their break even stops after like 25%, and it ends up coming down. And sometimes I miss the trades, reversing back after just drawing down maybe down 10%, and it goes back up. I understand that, but my thought process is you can always get back in the trade. Like there's no reason to let the trade go red after a 25%, winner and you're trimming, for it to go red just, to come back down and you basically break even on the trade or you lose money on the trade. There's just no reason, because you can always get back in it if it ends up reversing, right? That's my thought process. So that's kind of the reason I ended up putting my stops at break even, right? You can see a little bit later, out at break even, and I'll show you kind of why, right? So the reason I didn't want to hold this any longer, right? So if I put my targets here, so I had 2071, so that was kind of that spot, right? Or yesterday's high, so 2060 was kind of that big key level spot. And then once we saw over 260 or 2060, I mean, we were not going to see, anything until 2153. That was my thought process. So if we look through this 5 minute here, you can see, right? So I entered yesterday kind of around the close, around 220, entered this around here, right? So we saw that the price actually, it finally ended up getting some pullback in here, right? I basically was looking at this since like 10 a.m. last night or yesterday, and it just ended up kept going and it just never pulled back, right? So this is kind of the first pullback we had, even though it wasn't, a big enough pullback that I really wanted, but we ended up pulling back, kind of flipping these moving averages here, and then we kind of reclaimed those as we kind of went up here. And so that's when I entered those, right? Tight stops, right? I was actually had my stop loss at like 19.75 originally. So it was pretty tight stop, wouldn't have been a big loss. So took those, ended up ripping towards the end of the day just for it to come back down. So it kind of was up 10% towards the end of the day, 12%, and it comes back down to break even. So nothing really crazy there. And then we open up red. Obviously you can see we kind of gapped down a little bit, ripped up off that first 5 minutes. And this is where I took profits, right? So I took profits at 15% here, and then it ripped up again. This is where the contracts pretty much juiced a lot here at around 25%. I took those off here just because that was literally that spot that we needed to see it get over, right? 20.6. And then immediately the next 5 minute candle, a huge bearish engulfing. That's when I was like, okay, my stop loss is at break even. I'm not letting this trade, reverse off that spot, right? That was because I knew going ahead of time, this was a big key level we needed to see. And what do you know, right? We come back down, it breaks out on break even, kind of near here. Would have been only like a 5% loss at this point after that, which I'm not mad about, right? I want to see, I can always get back in here, like I said. So I watched it, right? It just chopped around all day, and then eventually it comes back up, right? So I didn't really alert this, but I did take a little lotto trade. I was just lottoing it. I was like, what? If I ended up missing out on this, I would actually be pissed. So I ended up taking this again. Lotto next week calls, right? So 21 for 116, 5 buys. I just was quickly getting in these. I was like, what if, right? Made another 30%, right? Obviously, I didn't take 30%, take the whole position out. I took around 3 off, and I let the other ones keep going, and then obviously those came back down to break even. So same, not a big trade, but ended up taking this twice, and it just continued to fail that 25 or 20.5 spot, 20.6 spot. So you can see it just continued to, this one looked like it was actually trying to go. I think the market just kind of dragged this down, or just it was kind of weird action. So it ends up selling all the way back off, and then good thing I did actually end up taking the loss on, or taking off on break even, because it didn't even end up working anyway. So this is the price that the chart we have now on RIVN, right? Not a pretty look. It's not ugly, but kind of just looks like so far a failed breakout. This probably can come back down into this range again around 18 and 19. But so far, right, that was the trade on RIVN. That was kind of a better example of risk management there. But some people, I've seen some people take this trade and end up stopping out on this. So I'm actually glad how I managed it. Right, I managed it how I used to do it, or how I do it. So I'm like, I respect my rules, all that stuff. So I'm not complaining about it. But yeah, that's the trade for the day. No trades going into tomorrow with the Supreme Court ruling. Hopefully we'll come back and hit a lotto trade. I'm feeling a little lotto-y tomorrow. So I'm gonna hit a lotto trade for Friday, 0 DTE, just for the fun of it. Let's get this in 2020, in the first week of 2026 off with a banger. I want like 100% trade in an hour, maybe not even. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna do tomorrow.